Hey guys, welcome back. In one of my previous videos, I added some basic view tracking feature to the short URL service. In general, this is a tracking feature. You normally will have pretty much a similar thing in your product to track your customer's behavior. You want to see how many clicks, how many views on a specific link. So that's the purpose. I also use the database to store the accounts. So that's pretty basic implementation. It also gives us no mechanism to render some chart to reveal the user behavior as time goes. So today I'm going to show you a much better solution. So we are going to use Prometheus, which is an open source monitoring solution to implement the tracking mechanism. Essentially, this is a session to introduce you how to integrate Prometheus with Laravel application. So in this video, I'm going to export the short URL views or clicks metrics to Prometheus for monitoring purpose. Okay, if you're not familiar with my project or the view tracking feature supported by database, feel free to check out the video on the top right corner. Feel free to check it out and see how I set up the project. Okay, I think that's it. And let's look into what I have done. So let me log into the short URL system. So this is a page. We have some URLs here. Actually, I have completed the integration, so just to make sure that the video won't be too long. Now let's see what we need to do to get it done with Prometheus. Firstly, so we need to set up the Prometheus. What we can do is to use some existing Docker Compose template. So this is what I used. This is this guy. This is the doc prom. So I'll put this link in the video description. So thanks to Steven to contribute to this great repository. So you can follow the documentation. Essentially, I just download the code and add it to my project. So this is what you can see. This is my code base. I put the doc prom in my project root. So one thing to mention that we need to make some changes to it so that it can work with our Laravel application dev server in the local environment. Okay, so this is the first thing. Essentially, once you clone the doc prom repository to your local environment, you can go to the folder and simply use Docker Compose up to run the Prometheus in your local environment. So I have already launched it. And later, shortly, I will show you what's the necessary change to make it work with your local Laravel application. But for now, we just launch the Prometheus in the local environment. So that's a step one. The next step is to work on the Laravel application side. To make it work with Prometheus, we need to install something. Firstly, this is the Prometheus PHP client that we can use for the Laravel application. So simply run composer require to install the dependency. In the composer.json, you can see I have already installed. So this is what I have now here. So you can follow the same. As you install this dependency, you can start working on some coding stuff. So this is the usage. And let me share what I have done. So in the app services folder, I create a new class called Prometheus service. So this is a service I used for the different use cases. So this you just follow the documentation. Basically, I want to track the short URL clicks or views. So I need a counter. So first of all, in the service constructor, I create the collector registry. So I get a default one. If I look into the default implementation, it's using Redis as the registry. So we need a Redis running in the local environment or in your environment. You can see here I just launched a server locally on the default port 6379. You should do the same. As you have the registry, you are able to work on some counter. Now, so for me, I just need a counter for the views. I also implement a function called increment views by token and the count. And the counter needs two properties or parameters, namespace and the job name. Namespace, I set it to short URLs, and the job name called short URL views. The third parameter here in the get or register counter function. This is a description. And the last one is the label name. So we label it as type, and you can also change to token. So you can feel free. You are free to rename it in your use case. Get or register counter will check if the current counter exists. If not, it will register a new one. Otherwise, return you the existing one. And inc by is a short for increment by. So this is the function you should call to increment the count and the label. So in my case, I want to increment the count by the token or the short URL hash. I will show you how it looks like in the metrics. Okay, so this is how we can increment the views. So where are we going to use it? In the controller. Now let's go to short URL controller. Every time while we are redirecting the user to the long URL or original URL, in the redirect function, remember that we used to use the increment function to update the count in database. Now we are going to use Prometheus service to increment. So we are using Prometheus to monitor. Okay, that's where we are using the Prometheus service. It's also injected in the function as a parameter. I will show you shortly how it's done, how it's injected. Now let's come back to the Prometheus service. Another function implement is called metrics. So this is used by Prometheus to pull the metrics periodically. So this is the Laravel application exposed endpoint. It's pretty standard we use standard text format. This is also imported from the Prometheus dependency or the package. We use the registry to get the metrics and rendered, so it's the text. We also set a header to the response. In the response, we set a header to MIME type, so pretty standard. You can also look into the client SDK documentation. This is how to expose the metrics. Now we have the metrics function ready for usage. The last thing we need to do is go to web PHP and add a new root /metrics. It will call the metrics function of the Prometheus controller. So forgot to mention that you also need to create a new controller. What I did is PHP artisan make controller, Prometheus controller. So this is how I made a new controller. So you need to follow the step. Now we have the metrics endpoint. Okay, so this is the Prometheus service. As we implement it, we need to get it injected into service container so that the other objects can use it or other instance. So we go to app service provider here. So we make the binding here, Prometheus class. This is you see the singleton. So this is the abstract and concrete or interface to the implementation. As we have just used the Prometheus service class, so we bind it in this way. As it's bind to the service container, so it can be easily injected to the short ER controller. So it can be used by the redirect function by simply declaring a third function parameter, Prometheus service. It will be injected. Okay, so this is the service, and let's see what it looks like as an endpoint. So you can see here, as I have already implemented and clicked the short URL a couple times before making this video, so you already see some metrics here. Let's try one. So let's see, XAQ ends with SAQ. Remember to count 6. Let's see XAQ. This one. Let's click twice. XAQ. Is there anything wrong here? Interesting. Let me see what's wrong here. How about QR code? Yeah, this is working. This is not. Did I change anything in the web? No. It worked? I'm not sure why. Okay. Yes. So in my guest account, I can't use localhost. So 1 second, let me change it to. I change it a bit. So I need to change to to 7.0.0.1. Now let me refresh a page. Okay, and this guy already works. Yeah, I click 3 times. Now I can close these tabs. Let's come back here. So you see here it's count 6. Now it's 9. So this is how the Laravel application accumulate or populate the counts to the metrics endpoint. Okay, so if you follow my video and follow the steps, I think it might not work for you, as there's still another thing you need to finish or complete. That's the Redis client installation. As I just mentioned, we need this Prometheus client SDK, and the default registry is using this guy. The default registry is using the Redis server as the registry. So you can see here, get default. It's using Redis. And it's looking for this class. So this class is from Prometheus client on SDK. In this SDK, it's also looking for another Redis class, which is you need to install. So this is what you need to install, and what to be installed is the PHP Redis. Remember that it's not the predis. You might be confused, but this is the package you need to install. That's a PHP extension for Redis. It's not a predis package. So this is the one, and you go to install Markdown. Markdown, you can see you can simply use pecl command to install Redis. So this is how you install it. Once you install the package and restart that server, everything should be working out of the box. Okay, so this is the implementation required in the Laravel application. Now you have a metrics endpoint available from the Laravel application. Now it's time to integrate it with Prometheus instance. Now let me show you what I changed in the Prometheus Docker container. Now let's see the Docker prom folder. If we go to Prometheus and the Prometheus.yml, the YAML configuration, if you clone or download from the repository, you should see the similar configuration. And I comment out all the jobs in the script configs, as I don't need them. The only thing I need to add is this job. You can name it whatever you like, and I name it to short URLs, and the interval set to 5 seconds. In static configuration section, the targets, I add this guy to the array. So this is the only target Prometheus is going to pull to script. Why do we need to use host.docker.internal? This is because we are running a Prometheus instance in the Docker container. The Docker container is not able to access the service on localhost, so it has to use host.docker.internal instead of 127.0.0.1. So if you'd like to know more details, you can search Docker and Prometheus Docker sys for host. Should see something pretty similar there are some answers on Stack Overflow. So I think this is also where I find the answer. So this is the official Docker documentation. So if you go and see, I want to connect a container to a service on host. So you can use this special DNS name to access your host. So feel free to check out this documentation if you are not familiar with it. Okay, now we can see we use host.docker.internal on same port 8000 instead of 127.0.0.1. Now the Prometheus Docker container can pull the metrics data every 5 seconds from the Laravel application using the metrics endpoint. So you don't need to specify /metrics. That's a default. So Prometheus will know that it needs to pull the data from there. Okay, I think that's everything you need to do to make it work. Okay, now it's time to go to Prometheus homepage. So this is the one. If you successfully launch the Prometheus container by using docker-compose op, and if you use docker ps graph Prometheus, you should see this container up and running on port 9090. Now it's time for you to use this URL 9090 graph. This is the UI interface of the Prometheus, and you can use expression. Expression is simply just the namespace underscore name, right? So this is what you see, and what I set in the Prometheus service. Remember here, so namespace and the name, counter name. So you should follow the pattern and build the string here. So namespace underscore name. So this is the pattern. And if you execute, you see in the table we have all these counters, and we see the graph. You should see here. So this is how it looks like. And let's see if we try to click M8 several times. So the short URL ends with M8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I click 10 times. Prometheus. So which one ends with the short URL or token end with M8? So this one. Prometheus will pull the metrics from my application every 5 seconds. It should be quick enough. So now you can see the line jumps from 32 to 42, so 10 more counts there. Okay, so this is how we can use a more production grade solution to monitor our application. And this is just the first step. We are just using the Prometheus to monitor. We can also integrate Graph now for better user experience on the monitoring. So it will be the topic of next video. Again, I will commit the code and make a PR share in the video description. You will see what I've changed, so you can follow the same steps to and get it try in your local environment. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Remember to thumbs up, ring the bell, subscribe to the channel. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye bye.